Welcome back. Today we're diving deep into something absolutely fundamental, maybe even a bit of a paradox. Heredity.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Think about it. You look in the mirror, you see your mom's nose, maybe your dad's
Oh
eyes.
yeah, definitely. People tell me I have my grandfather's walk even.
Right, so there's this amazing consistency, this predictability. With
Then
birth,
you look at your brother or sister and they might seem completely different. Same parents, totally unique outcome. How does that work? How can life be so, well, repetitive and unique all at once?
that's the core question, isn't it? And that's our mission today. We're going to unpack the rulebook of inheritance. We need to understand the reliable rules that ensure stability.
Mendel's work, presumably.
Mendel's work is key, yes.
Yeah.
The laws that govern what gets passed down reliably. But we also need to explore where all the variation comes from.
Because it's not just humans, right? This applies everywhere in biology.
Everywhere, from bacteria dividing to, well, to the garden peas that Mendel famously studied. The principles are universal.
Okay, so our sources dive right into this idea of variation by looking at reproduction type. Asexual reproduction first.
Yeah, think of a huge sugarcane field, all grown from cuttings,
Why?
or bacteria just splitting in two.
What kind of variation do you see there? Not much, I'm guessing.
Very, very little. It's basically cloning.
Mm-hmm.
Any tiny differences are usually just small errors, mistakes made when copying the DNA, like typos.
Right, almost identical copies.
But then you switch to sexual reproduction. Animals, plants, us.
And suddenly everything changes.
Completely. It's like a variation factory. Every generation, the genetic deck gets shuffled. Our sources call it quite distinct variations among individuals in a population.
Okay, so sexual reproduction generates loads of variety, generation after generation, but is all that variety useful? Does it all stick around? And how does the environment play into those?
The environment. That's the crucial filter. These variations, they're definitely not all equally advantageous.
Some are good, some are bad, some are just neutral.
Pretty much. And when the environment puts pressure on, say, a sudden heat wave hits a population of bacteria,
Then what happens?
well, any bacteria that happen to have a random variation making them slightly more heat tolerant, they're the ones that survive.
Okay. So if one bacterium has like a slightly tougher cell wall because of a tiny DNA difference.
Exactly. It survives the heat wave, reproduces, and passes that heat-tolerant trait on. The ones without it, they likely die off.
So the environment selects the winners.
Precisely. And that selection, based on who's best suited to the current conditions, that's the driving force behind evolution. But for evolution to work, you need those traits to be passed on reliably. Which brings us to
Gregor Johann Mendel, the father of genetics.
the man himself. Before him, the common idea was sort of blending, like mixing paint. Red and white makes pink, right?
Yeah, that seems intuitive.
But Mendel showed it wasn't like that at all. Inheritance is discrete, it comes in packets. And his genius was using mathematics. He didn't just watch plants grow, he counted them meticulously.
He kept records of every single plant for specific traits, generation after generation.
Yes, and his choice of garden peas was brilliant. Why? Because they had these clear-cut, contrasting traits.
No ambiguity, like plants were either tall or short, seeds were round or wrinkled.
Exactly. None of this medium height or slightly wrinkly stuff. It gave him clean data to work with.
Let's walk through that first big experiment he did, the one focusing just on plant height.
Okay, so he took plants he knew were pure, tall. They always produced tall offspring, and crossed them with pure, short plants.
And the first generation of offspring, the F1 generation, what did they look like?
This is where it got really interesting. Every single one of those F1 plants was tall.
Every single one, no short ones, no medium ones.
None. It was as if the short trait had just vanished, completely contradicted the blending idea.
So the instruction for short seemed to be gone, but Mendel didn't stop there, did he?
No, that was the crucial next step. He took those F1 tall plants and let them self-pollinate.
Yeah.
Create a second generation, the F2.
And if the short trait had truly disappeared...
Then all the F2 plants should also have been tall. Simple.
But that's not what happened, was it?
Not at all. In that F2 generation, the short trait reappeared. About a quarter, 1 in 4, of the plants were short.
Wow. Okay, so the short trait wasn't gone, it was just hidden.
Exactly. It was inherited by the F1 plants, but it wasn't expressed. It was masked by the tall trait.
How can something be there but not be seen? That feels weird.
It does. But this led Mendel to his huge insight. We now know that for traits like these, organisms like us, anything that reproduces sexually, get 2 copies of the instruction or gene, one from each parent.
Okay. 2 copies.
And sometimes one copy can mask the effect of the other. This gave us the concepts of dominant and recessive traits.
Right. So tallness, which showed up even if only one copy was present, is dominant. We can maybe represent it with a capital T.
Perfect. And shortness, which only appeared when both copies were for shortness, is recessive. We use a lowercase t.
So the F1 plants, getting 1 T from the tall parent and 1 T from the short parent, had the genetic makeup T.
Correct. And because T is dominant over T, they all look tall. But they still carried that hidden T.
And when those T plants self-pollinated, you could get TT, TT, and T combinations in the F2 generation.
Exactly. TT and T plants are tall, but the TT plants, they express the recessive traits, so they're short. That's why about 1/4 were short. It's a predictable mathematical ratio.
That's incredible. Just by counting P's, he figured out these fundamental rules, a total game changer.
Absolutely. It laid the foundation for all of genetics.
Okay, so that explains how a single trait is inherited. But what about multiple traits? Like, does inheriting tall mean you also have to inherit round seeds? Are traits linked together?
Another brilliant question Mendel asked. Because if traits were always bundled, variation would be much more limited, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you just get the same combinations over and over.
So he did another experiment, the dihybrid cross, tracking 2 traits at once.
What did he cross this time?
He took plants that were pure for tall height and round seeds and crossed them with plants pure for short height and wrinkled seeds.
Okay, following the pattern, I bet the F1 generation all showed the dominant traits.
You got it. All the F1 plants were tall and had round seeds. Confirmed tall and round are dominant. No surprises yet.
But the real test is the F2 generation, right? When those F1s self-pollinate.
Exactly. And what he saw in the F2 was fascinating. He got the original combinations back, of course, tall, round, and short wrinkled.
Yeah.
But he also got new combinations. Plants that were tall but had wrinkled seeds, and plants that were short but had round seeds.
Ah, so the traits weren't linked? Height and seed shape were sorted independently.
Precisely. This proved the principle of independent inheritance or independent assortment. The factor for height is inherited completely separately from the factor for seed shape. They don't influence each other.
And this creates way more possible combinations, right? More variety.
Massively more. He even worked out the ratio. For every 16 plants, roughly, you'd get 9 showing both dominant traits, tall round, 3 showing 1 dominant and 1 recessive, tall wrinkled, 3 showing the other combo, short round, and 1 showing both recessive traits, short wrinkled, the famous 9.3.3.1 ratio.
It's all so beautifully mathematical, but let's connect this back to the biology. We're talking about factors or instructions. How does a gene, a piece of DNA, actually cause a plant to be tall? What's the mechanism?
Good question. It boils down to proteins. Basically, the DNA sequence of a gene holds the instructions for building a specific protein.
Okay, DNA makes protein.
Often that protein is an enzyme, which is a molecule that speeds up a chemical reaction in the cell.
Right, like building blocks or tools within the cell.
Exactly. So let's take the tallness example again. Plant height depends on the amount of a particular growth hormone.
Makes sense. More hormone, taller plant.
And the amount of that hormone produced depends on how well a specific enzyme works, the enzyme that makes the hormone.
Ah, you see where this is going.
The gene for height controls how that enzyme is built. The dominant T version of the gene might code for a really efficient enzyme. Lots of hormone gets made, plant grows tall.
And the recessive T version?
Maybe it codes for a less efficient version of the enzyme, or maybe even a non-functional one. So less hormone is made. If you have 2 T copies, you don't make enough hormone, and the plant stays short.
So the gene controls the enzyme controls the hormone, and the hormone controls the height. It's a direct chain from DNA to trait.
That's the fundamental mechanism. Genes exert their influence by directing the production and function of proteins.
Okay, we've gone from P's to proteins. Let's switch gears now to us, to humans. How is something as basic as biological sex determined? We know heredity needs to be reliable, but how does that work for sex, especially when other species seem to do it differently?
Yeah, nature has a lot of strategies for this. It's not always genetic. Well, in some reptiles, like turtles or crocodiles, the temperature during egg incubation determines sex. Hotter temperatures might mean females, cooler might mean males, or vice versa, depending on the species.
Wow, so the environment decides, not the genes.
In those cases, yes. Or think about some animals, like certain snails or fish, that can actually change sex during their lifetime.
They can switch, so it's definitely not fixed genetically for them.
Not rigidly fixed, no. But in humans, it's largely genetic, and
Yeah.
it comes down to our chromosomes.
Right, we have pairs of chromosomes, 23 pairs usually.
Correct. 22 of those pairs are, well, pretty much perfectly matched copies called autosomes. But the 23rd pair, the sex chromosomes, is where things can differ.
Okay, how so?
In females, the 23rd pair is a perfect match.
Mm-hmm.
2 X chromosomes, so XX.
And in males?
Males have 1 X chromosome, but their other sex chromosome is much smaller, called the Y chromosome. So males are XY. It's a mismatched pair.
A mismatched pair determines sex. But wait, if both parents contribute roughly half the DNA, how does that work out? The mother must always give an X, right? Since she only has X chromosomes, X.
Exactly right. Every egg cell produced by a female carries a single X chromosome.
So the difference must come from the father, since he's XY.
Precisely. The father's sperm cells are variable. Half of them will carry an X chromosome, and the other half will carry a Y chromosome.
Ah, so it's the sperm that determines the sex of the child.
Correct. If a sperm carrying an X fertilizes the egg, which always has an X, the resulting combination is XX, a girl.
And if a sperm carrying a Y fertilizes the egg?
The combination is XY, a boy. It's basically a 50-50 chance determined by which type of sperm reaches the egg first.
So that simple XY difference, that one mismatched pair, provides a reliable genetic mechanism for determining sex in humans. It fits perfectly with Mendel's ideas of factors being passed down.
It does. It's a neat, effective system based on chromosomal inheritance.
Amazing. So looking back at our deep dive, we started with that paradox of similarity and uniqueness.
And we saw how Mendel's work gave us the rules. Heredity is reliable because traits are passed down as discrete units, genes. We have dominant and recessive versions.
And organisms have 2 copies of each gene, one from each parent.
Crucially, we also saw that different traits, like height and seed shades and peas, are typically inherited independently. They aren't bundled together.
Which is what generates so much variation when combined with sexual reproduction shuffling the deck.
Exactly. That independent assortment, governed by how chromosomes separate during the formation of eggs and sperm, maximizes the potential for new combinations of traits. It's the engine for diversity and adaptation.
It really helps make sense of how just, 2 versions of a gene, dominant and recessive, following simple rules, can lead to all the incredible variety of life we see around us.
It is quite elegant. And it leads to a final thought, something for you to consider.
Oh,
We mentioned those other species, right? The reptiles where temperature determines sex, or the snails that can change sex. In those cases, a really fundamental trait isn't strictly set by genetics.
yeah, the environment or internal factors can override or change it.
So here's the question. If something as basic as sex can be flexible and respond to non-genetic factors in some species, what other characteristics do we humans assume are rigidly fixed by our genes? Things like, say, aspects of temperament, or maybe resilience to certain stresses. Could some of these traits actually be more biologically flexible, more responsive to our environment or experiences than we currently think?
That's interesting. How much of what we consider fixed might actually have some built-in adaptability we don't fully appreciate?
Exactly. What potential for biological adaptation might lie just beyond the genetic code we've mapped? Something to think about.